Welcome to Narratives Leadership Story Talks, where great leaders go beyond the bottom line to create lasting impact. Join hosts Jerome Deroy and Julienne Ryan as they uncover the stories behind real-world challenges, offering practical insights to help you lead with empathy, authenticity, and purpose. Each episode dives into how leaders use storytelling to build trust, foster connection, and inspire action. Whether you're navigating workplace dynamics, driving change, or building high-performing teams.
Then I realized, upon further reflection and with the benefit of time, that the narrative wasn't that I quit something that I loved. It was more so that I chose myself in that moment, and I knew who I needed to surround myself with in order to grow, to become the person and the leader that I wanted to be. And it really taught me about surrounding myself with leaders that I admire.
All right, welcome back to Leadership Story Talks for a very special debrief episode. And I'm really happy to be back here with my wonderful co-host, Julienne.
Terrific. And me as well. Always happy. And it's excited to talk about our latest live event. It was quite wonderful and so informative.
Yeah, so well, let's get into it. You just the cat's out of the bag. This is about our last live event, which happened on March 19, just a week ago when you're hearing this. So, I would love to talk to you about what you found to be memorable. What did you get from this particular event? It's our second one now, and I'm always really eager to hear some of the lessons learned and pass that on to our audience.
Well, first of all, the tech work, which was wonderful. So we're always learning and being better, and applauding our tech person, Alexandra, for helping. Secondly, the through line that happens in everybody's stories about how a compelling event really framed their experience. In Gina's, it was how a teacher from early childhood really impacted how she saw a thing she loved doing that caused her to even step away from it when there was a mishap during a performance, a children's recital. And then how another teacher really helped reframe that and help her re-embrace and fall in love with her beloved pastime, later on. But guidance and feedback. Same thing with Derek. Oh my God, anybody who's ever had a part-time job they're trying to explain, he gives a brilliant one about how everything comes in handy at one time, but a great sense of humor and how we repurposed every experience. And then finally, in the niche of life in crisis and hanging and not having control, and what she learned in lessons. All different, but all very, very connected by the story and how they chose to reframe it and use it in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those listening who haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, I really highly recommend that you go do that. But yes, the three people who told stories at this event, Gina Liao, Derek McCracken, and Lanisha Adams, what were really outstanding just as storytellers, but also what they were willing to share. They really took that prompt to heart, stories that shaped us. And I think it's really important for anyone who's listening to kind of think about these moments, these experiences that you've had, which if you listen to Gina's and Derek's stories in particular, I'll go on to Lanisha's, but Gina's and Derek's were not particularly, on the face of it, something that you would judge as a remarkable, transformative moment in your life. It was a snapshot of someone's life in a very particular moment. Gina, you could see her in that ballet recital, with her little hat that's hanging and then falls off. Derek, you could see him in this Easter bunny costume, right? And so, but it's a really small moment. These are small moments in that moment in your life. If anybody asked, wow, that must not be a moment that shaped you, right? But 20 years later, however many years later, you can say that it did. Whereas Lanisha's, you wake up from a coma in the hospital, obviously that's a transformative moment, right? And that is very, very obviously something that's going to shape who you are today. But it doesn't have to be. And that's what I loved about this one in particular, is that we had such a wide array of experiences and moments in those three stories. Because I think a lot of times people think, oh, I got to find, the one moment that really shaped me. The truth is that if you go back and listen to each of those episodes individually, because Gina, Lanisha, and Derek were on Leadership Story Talks for different reasons at different moments. They had different answers to those questions about a moment that shaped who they are today.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it really is kind of up to you to choose which moment you want to talk about as something that shaped you. And it has to be relevant to who you are today. And I think probably if you were to ask me 10 years ago what was a moment that shaped me, it would be a different answer than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you asked me in an hour, it'd probably be different than what I'm thinking now, right? It's because it all depends on the context, the audience, and why I'm wanting to tell that story right now. So I thought that was interesting.
So you can tell I'm excited because I'm picking my hands up and talking with my hands before I even talk out loud. So I'm going to choose Gina for a moment because, to your point, her story was a poignant, bittersweet story from childhood, the first one she used. And then she had a part B to it. But it formed ingredients of how she led and taught later on. So here's this very accomplished person. She's written a book. She's been a leader and called to speak to so many people. She's been a game changer in her specialities in the past. And this tiny little story, a nugget for when she was a child, informed how she led and guided people as much as any degree that she earned or any job experience she had. It all was connected. And I think that's what I love about story. Our favorite word, context, and connecting the dots is also my favorite thing. It brings the human to life in a different way than just reading their bio, etc. So I just found that was the special lesson of this episode. Simple can inform as much as any big moment in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really essential, that at the end of the day, the reason that we tell stories in this way, that we have an event, every other month, that's, gaining traction and all of that from one to the next. And the fact that people want to be telling their stories, that, we're full up with storytellers until November, for this. And I think there's a real appetite for it for exactly the reason you just gave. It's so much more than a bio. And it connects, not only does it connect to your bio, but it actually does more in terms of knowing who you are for your audience, and knowing what you do and what matters to you and what drives you and those kinds of things. And I really believe that if you are able to articulate that in a story, even if it's just a story of one or two moments in your life, people will understand that. They'll make the connection to who you are and what you do and what drives you. And as a result of that, they're much more likely to follow you, to sign on the dotted line, whatever it is that you want to call people action into.
And there was also some humor in the episode, and it had to do with the two of us. When we first did our first live event, we realized we both did live events in public performing that week. Didn't talk to each other, just did it. It showed up in our conversations. This time we both showed up on screen with structured business jackets to frame our appearance. And I was like, didn't talk to each other. What are you wearing? What are you doing? No, we just showed up. So now the pressure's on for the third one. Are we going to do that again?
I know.
And what form is it going to take?
That's right. And we're not allowed to talk to each other.
Gowns miles. But
right.
Still, it works. So there is human connection happening here on so many different levels.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I also kind of noticed that even in terms of the audience that was there, and, the people who were commenting on the stories, which was very active this time around as well. And you just sort of make these connections that I wouldn't have been able to make otherwise if this
Yes,
hadn't been a
indeed.
live event, and oh, that person is showing up and look at that. There's a connection with Derek I can make, or there's a connection with Gina or Lanisha right there in the room. And I think that's really the beauty of sort of you prepare, you prepare, you prepare, and then you're ready to go. And then you hit the live button and people show up and now you don't know what's going to happen exactly, even if you've prepared for it. So, the fact that we both had a jacket on and, the fact that that people who showed up were somehow connected to our
Correct.
storytellers, without us not necessarily knowing that in advance. These are the kinds of things that I think are really important to remember, to sort of like it's important to have these moments where we get to connect with each other and we've prepared a lot for it, but at the same time we're leaving quite a bit to the unknown when we're doing something live, and that's something magical happens there.
And it's two words for anyone who's using storytelling in their work or considering using it in their business settings or their work setting or educational settings to work with their staffs and colleagues and maybe even people in their community, that there's courage and vulnerability. Like, it's not that we come fully brave or without nerves or without, a lot of internal dialogue going, but we take a chance and then we do believe that the framework we use builds trust and
Mm,
safety to
yeah,
get the right frame of mind for the listener as well as the sharer. And then we live by a saying, at least I know I've shared it with you, the perfect, or not perfect, 'cause that means no error. The right story is going to show up. It's on our shoulders to allow it and give
yeah,
permission or help the teller share their story
yeah,
and support the group that's listening. So that's
yeah.
part of the work that's important.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that because that what you just said here, the way that we prepare the storytellers to go onto this virtual stage every time we do this, that has led directly to something we're launching called the Listening Lab,
Mm.
where you, dear
Oh,
listener, can actually
me?
take advantage of that. You can actually be part, and I'm counting you as one of the facilitators, Julienne.
Oh,
So
thank you very
so
much.
you will get the benefit um, of getting this structured, safe space in which it's possible to listen to people in such a way that stories that matter to you emerge. And then once they emerge, you can start crafting them and you can start telling them. But that foundational sort of element of listening is really important, which is why we're calling it the listening lab as opposed to the storytelling lab. But there'll be plenty
Mhm.
of storytelling going on there. But the idea is to meet up on a monthly basis for 90 minutes, and people will bring their material. They'll bring their stories. If they don't want to tell a story and just listen, you'll get a lot from that, as you know. And so I think that's really been what's inspired the listening lab has been directly these events and preparing these storytellers and seeing, wow, that's really engaging, and people seem to be engaging themselves as well in this process. So why not have access to a process like this every month? So that's the idea. There's a link in the episode notes, and you can find out more. And please, as always, you can ask us questions and reach out directly too.
And a call to action. What if we all have like top 20 stories or vignettes that keep swirling around our heads that we keep either retelling or telling ourselves?
Yeah.
What if you picked one of those and
Mm.
start to play with it a little bit in a new way based on
Yes.
what you learned here and then based on what you're going to experience in the listening lab?
Yeah, totally. I love that. So yes, pick one of those. Pick a story. One last thing I'll say is that Lanisha, it's related to what you just said because Lanisha told me I'd heard this story before, but she told me she was going to tell it in a new way, and it was true. There were elements that I either didn't remember or just popped out in my head this time around, even though I've heard that story at least 3 times now.
Mhm.
So yes, you can do that with your stories. You can kind of renew them if you need to, if they've become a little bit stale to you, or you can find a brand new one. So yeah, let's
Let's
look
go
for
for
that
it.
story and then bring it to the listening lab. We'll be waiting for
Terrific.
you. All right. Well, thanks again, Jules, for being my wonderful co-host as always. Can't wait for the next one. And thank you all listeners for being with us. And we look forward to the next time we get together. Again, go and look at those episode notes for those useful links, especially the one to the listening lab. And if you haven't already, leave a review wherever you find your podcast, because that drives the word of mouth. And we are ever so grateful for word of mouth. So thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.